Hello, everyone. Welcome in on a Friday night to the Voice of College Football. And this is your social activism free sports programming for the week. How about that? We actually have sports programming that we're actually just going to talk about what's going out on the field and not talk all these stupid social activist promotions. Oh, my word. I am about to blow up, throw a fit. All this complete crap, disgusting garbage that I've seen on social media today with sports and professional sports in particular and the social activism role that they're playing. It's so disgusting. It's beyond belief. All right. We're going to talk college football here at the Voice of College Football. And again, when we have something that is socially active of an activist standpoint that is good and wholesome and pure and of truth, we will certainly stand up and fight for that. Yes. Thank you for being here, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We're going to talk the game we all love each and every day, as we always do. And we're going to talk it here for the next 2 hours leading up to kickoff in the Pac-12 championship game, Utah and USC from Vegas. And also we've got the Conference USA championship game tonight on CBS Sportsnet. Not to be forgotten, North Texas taking on, maybe it is to be forgotten, North Texas taking on Texas San Antonio, the big favorite at home in the Alamo Dome. There we go. All right, we have left the link in the chat, so please give me a call. What we've got on the docket is obviously breaking down USC and Utah. Pac-12 championship game for USC. It's a win, and you're in to the college football playoff. For Utah, it's defend your Pac-12 championship. And then the other championship game, I'll certainly take comments here about the other championship game. And, of course, the transfer portal. The transfer portal for the first couple cycles, I kind of got it in regards to players' decisions. Either I'm not starting here, I'm not getting any real time here, and I can go somewhere else and improve my chances of playing. I'm going to go from a SEC school down to a group of 5 school because I can now get on the field and play. And that's what I want. I want to play, or I've got pro aspirations and I'm fourth in line here. And then, of course, from the quarterback standpoint, there's only one of them that play. So you've got to be the guy, the best. Otherwise, you're not going to play, so you're going to move on. Now, I look at some of these transfer portal decisions and I wonder, wow, where does this person think that they're going to go? And there's not going to be similar competition, especially at the quarterback position. Just today, we've got Boston College's Phil Jurkovec, one-time Notre Dame commit and signee, moving on from Boston College, where he's the starting quarterback now for 3 seasons, even though he's been banged up the last 2 seasons and hasn't completed the season for the Eagles. And now Haynes King, who battled for the job in 2021, lost to Zach Calzada. Actually, no, Haynes King won the job against Zach Calzada in 2021, was hurt against Colorado on the road, and then didn't make it back in 21. Then he battled for the job this season and lost the job to Brad Johnson. But then he, of course, Max Johnson, Brad's son, and then, of course, got playing time later. And then he was hurt and didn't finish the season. So Haynes King has decided, for whatever reason, and it's almost understandable with Texas A&M considering Jimbo Fisher's handling of quarterbacks and handling of offense, that there are other opportunities out there. And of course, the one that got the most attention around here because of the Michigan connection and the Big Ten is Cade McNamara to Iowa. All right. Appreciate the super chat coming in. Let's see what you got. And again, we've left a link in the chat for you guys to jump on and talk college football before the SEC, before the USC and Utah game. Pregame Sports, let's go! Last weekend of meaningful football for 4 weeks. Yes. So I understand your point. Your point is probably shared by the masses. I get it. The bowls don't count. The bowls are not meaningful. I would disagree, though. I'm in the minority, possibly at this point, because I certainly love the bowl games, and I think they're as meaningful or more meaningful than most regular season games. Go through each conference and the number of teams that didn't play too far into the season before their games were meaningless. Take somebody like even somebody as good as Florida State. Even someone as good as Florida State, at what point were those games no longer meaningless? Well, basically, once they lost to Clemson, even before they lost to Clemson, they lost 2 games in the ACC before that. They were done. And certainly once they lost to Clemson, they were done, and their games were, based on your definition, meaningless, based on what I am assuming to a certain extent, based on your comment, that you're tying meaning to impact on championships. So non-conference games are pretty meaningless to a certain extent, because you can still go out and win your conference. And if you win all the games, it depends on what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee wants to decide. But most of those non-conference games, most of them, meaning almost every one of them, meaningless. Looking back on it, the Georgia-Oregon game, meaningful. I guess Clemson-Notre Dame, since Clemson lost that game, that was meaningful. And maybe Ohio State, Notre Dame, if Ohio State's able to play their way into the playoff. Otherwise, wow. All those non-conference games, based on that definition, meaningless. There were only about 3 non-conference games that have been meaningful this year. That's pretty sad. And based on your definition, again, 75%, 80% of conference games across the Power 5, meaningless as well. So I understand you're looking at championship aspirations and implications. And yes, the bowl games will not factor into that. But I love the bowl games. The bowl games, to me, are more meaningful than most in-season games. They're more interesting. You have teams playing that never play one another. And to me, they're more interesting than watching Kansas play Oklahoma State the 10th week of the season. So I will stick up for the bowl games. I will stick up for the bowls. Okay, you know what? I didn't pick tonight's game yet. Michael says, do you give Utah a fighting chance to beat USC? And I need to make sure that we post our media predictions on Patreon and my prediction on Patreon, because I've been so incredibly busy. I did not pick this game. Of course, Utah's got a fighting chance. They actually played them this year, and Utah won the game. Utah's only a 2.5-point dog in this game. Of course, they've got a fighting chance. They've got more than a fighting chance. Michael, why do you say that for when Michigan is still... I don't know what that even says. All right, we got Brooks here. I'm going for Utah, no bias. Wink, wink. Oregon fan. Going for Utah, no bias. I don't know what the... Sorry, not to be up on the allegiances within the Pac-12, that if you're an Oregon fan, that you would favor USC over Utah or the other way around. Mike says Caleb is fighting for the Heisman and a college football playoff berth. USC is an emotional lock. You would think so, right? But how many instances have we seen like this in the past? Upset. And it wouldn't even really be an upset based on Vegas. Michael says, Mark, I was replying to, okay. All right. Maybe we'll have a short pregame, because I really don't feel like listening to myself talk for 2 hours. I could dive into these transfer portal decisions, because there's a ton of them. Let's run them down. I'm going to go to the transfer portal Twitter account, 247 Sports. Let's pull that up. Pregame's here. See what he's got here. Let's go. Last weekend of meaningful football for 4 weeks. Did I see that for a second time? No, I just scrolled through. Thank you for that so much, Pregame Sports. I would like to call up the transfer portal because I got to say, I've not done anything with this. It's just happening too fast, and it's just guys leaving teams at this point, just determining that they are entering the transfer portal. So outside of Cade McNamara, who's a transfer, a grad transfer, so he can leave early before December 5th. December 5th is the first day of the transfer portal for undergrads. So we've seen Cade McNamara leave and go to Iowa. But other than that, I have not seen anyone of note who has gone to another school yet. Once they do, of course, we'll be all over it and cranking out videos. For those of you who were with me when we first launched, there was only like 8 people on here for the first 30 seconds to a minute. My blood pressure is still coming down. Actually, I got all my blood work and results back today. Look at this. I'm in perfect health. So I'm very glad of that and very thankful. Praise God. I'm healthy. So anyway, reason I bring that up is that my blood pressure usually runs a little low, but man, I was a bit steamed. I was trying to keep it under wraps, but I was a bit steamed when I came on at the beginning, but very few of you saw that, but I was a bit steamed about just the disgusting promotions and so forth I see in professional sports on social media. Caught more today. Had some people send me some, alert me to some crap that's going on out there that's completely disgusting. All right, we're going to go through the transfer portal because I want to see what I've missed. And I highlighted Haynes King, of course, and also the other one I saw, which is Phil Jerkovic, Boston College. Trying to get these graphics out of the way. Here we go. Transfer portal. Okay, this is the latest. I don't know that that's anyone of note. Who do we have there? A Virginia Tech player. I can't tell who that is. Then we've got West Virginia starting tight end there. Just minutes ago, Nebraska safety Jaden Gould. He's in the transfer portal. I should do something on that for the Nebraska folks on the Nebraska channel. Kent State cornerback. How could anybody ever decide to leave beautiful Kent State University? How is that possible that anyone could make that tragic mistake? Montre Miller, cornerback at Kent State, 52 tackles, 2 picks. He's leaving. Then we have a Washington State linebacker, Travion Brown, entering the portal. This is all in the last half hour. There's Oklahoma wide receiver Theo Weiss. We've talked about that already. We covered that on the Oklahoma show this week. Texas A&M cornerback Denver Harris. He was a big recruit at the time. He's in the portal. There's Haynes King. So if you missed it, we talked about Haynes King off the top. And again, won the starting job in 2021, got hurt against Colorado for the rest of the season. He was out. And then he was beaten out by Max Johnson this year. But then Max Johnson got hurt. He got playing time. He was in the lineup against Alabama, almost pulled off that upset. And now he's in the portal. Connor Bazelak, we've mentioned him. That's just official now, but he announced that quite a long time ago, a couple days ago. Stanford linebacker Lavani Damuni led Stanford in tackles each of the last 2 years. There you go. That's how much I've been paying attention to Stanford football right there. That's how much I've paid attention to Stanford, that their leading tackler the last 2 years, I didn't even know who it was. That would have never happened 5 years ago. That would have never happened during the Christian McCaffrey time, Kevin Hogan time frame. I knew all the linebackers, all the front seven. I knew the entire defense because we actually watched Stanford football on an almost weekly basis, but they've been in the abyss. So I'm sure he's helping himself by leaving Stanford. May have something to do with David Shaw leaving. Former East Carolina safety Sean Dorso. UMass, Sam Houston State, Notre Dame quarterback Drew Pine. We saw him play a tremendous game against USC, albeit he had 2 big turnovers in that game, but otherwise, Drew Pine will not play for Notre Dame in its bowl game. So there's no Tyler Buckner. Drew Pine's out. I don't know who the third stringer is, so we will find that out, as of course Notre Dame will be assigned a bowl game this Sunday. Speaking of former Notre Dame quarterbacks, Phil Jurkovec, he's in the portal. We talked about that. 3-year starter with 1 year of eligibility remaining at Notre Dame. Okay. This is a good player right here. Texas A&M grad transfer wide receiver Chase Lane. Really good player. Mississippi State has offered him. Another BC quarterback, Dalen Menard, is in the portal. Hmm, 247 Sports article right here trying to sell us on Iowa and landing Cade McNamara could be a program changer. Cade McNamara, program changer. Now, I don't believe that they're most likely talking about just Cade McNamara and Cade McNamara talent being a program changer, but possibly, okay, is this Iowa's first step in actually being a factor in the transfer portal and changing the offense, bringing in a legitimate offensive coordinator and actually putting the ball in the end zone. But that might be an overstatement there. Iowa's had a lot of offensive players leave. We've got a wide receiver, Arlen Bruce, maybe their fastest wide receiver, leaving, along with Keegan Johnson. There we've got a Louisville linebacker. We've got a Stanford grad cornerback, Salim Turner Mohammed. Don't know what kind of factor he was at Stanford. There's Cade McNamara. Texas A&M corner, Brian George. Nebraska linebacker, Ernest Hausman. He played. He was a player. He got on the field. He's entering the transfer portal. One of the great promotional events and one of the great promotional advances in the short history of NIL, of course, Dakotas Crawford of the great commercial that a marketing genius there, Dakotas Crawford, has entered the transfer portal. Brennan Armstrong in the transfer portal. So between Phil Jurkovec, Drew Pine, Haynes King, and Brennan Armstrong, 4, I'm not going to call them top-notch quarterbacks. I'm going to call them high-profile quarterbacks. We all know who they are. And along with Oregon State quarterback Chance Nolan, who lost his job to Ben Gulbranson. He's thrown 32 touchdowns and 4,100 yards in his career. That's 5. Texas A&M 5-star true freshman defensive lineman Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. When National Signing Day hits in 2 weeks, make it about 2.5 weeks, we should all be less invested. And I shouldn't say that because I want you to be invested in watching, but I tell you the truth. So even if it hurts my channel and hurts myself, I'm still going to tell you the truth. We should be less invested in these signings coming up on National Signing Day, because here's a great example of a tremendous five-star true freshman defensive lineman, and all the hoopla that surrounded his decision, and he chooses Texas A&M. I don't know that he saw the field much his true freshman season, but now he's gone. So all that stress and anxiety and publicity and talk and discussion and conjecture and projections being made about Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy and where he would go to college, what did it all amount to? Nothing. Nothing. There's another Texas A&M defensive end, Tunmis Edelay, former national top 50 prospect. So Texas A&M is already falling apart. I know every program is going to have a substantial haul of players leave, but Texas A&M's is going to be on the high end. And we already see their 4 prominent players. We talked this on the Miami show last night with a wholesome one. Al Blades Jr. has entered the transfer portal. He was a top 100 recruit in the 2018 class. Florida's Avery Helm. Lorenzo Lingard, former 5-star quarterback who originally signed at Miami, then went to Florida, and he's done nothing. He's transferring. Justin Shorter. Oh, a little bit different news here. Florida wide receiver Justin Shorter, former Penn Stater. He has announced his decision to declare for the upcoming NFL draft. You've got a this would be a Northwestern grad transfer. Tyler Haskins, he's gone. He's leaving. So is the Cincinnati center Jake Renfro. First team. Wait a minute. Cincinnati center Jake Renfro has entered the transfer portal. He was a first team all ACC. I think they screwed up that tweet. That would be all AAC. There's Keegan Johnson, Iowa, gone. Kentucky reserve wideout Rashawn Lewis. Louisville running back Jalen Mitchell, gone. Maryland linebacker Ahmad McCullough had 45 tackles this year, 3 TFLs, and he is leaving as a grad transfer. Tyree Jackson, we talked about that last week with our guy Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Cavassier Smoke. He's posted over 1,500 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. Cavassier Smoke entering the transfer portal as a grad transfer. There's a Stanford offensive lineman, multi-year starter, Jake Hornibrook. Stanford edge rusher, Stephen Herron, 5.5 sacks last year. Their top pass rusher, gone, ready for the next step. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on, folks. Hummus Hero. Surprised that Drew Pine is entering the portal. He played pretty well. Seems like he could beat out Buckner next year. However, I don't know about that. He should have a fighting chance based on the way that he played. He did play pretty well. However, is it CJ Carr who's reclassifying in 2023? And I would expect Notre Dame would be out there looking for a veteran quarterback, a top-notch guy coming out. Daniel, Texas A&M had bad luck this year. If every game they lost by 7 or less went their way, they'd be 10-2. Seriously? Come on, Daniel. Really? They had bad luck this year? they also had extreme luck the other way when Arkansas gave them a scoop and score that went 90-some yards. Otherwise, they would have lost that game. Plus, the game-winning field goal hit the upright. They also had the Miami game. That could have been a loss. They could have been 3-9. They won 2 games in the SEC, right? LSU and Arkansas. They could have been losses. One Scoop John says CJ Carr is coming in the class of 2024. I made that comment the other day, and somebody told me that I respect and trust for their insight into these things that he is reclassified to 2023. Oh, absolutely, Tropicana. We could make a whole conference. We could make an All-America team. It'd be a downgraded, low-grade All-America team. But, yeah, we'll have to work on that. Also coming next week, be looking out for my conference players of the year. Following the conference championship games, the other conferences or the other outlets award conference players of the year, and they're all conference teams certainly before the championship games, after the regular season. But I'm waiting till after conference championship weekend. And next year going out is going to be my conference players of the year. So be looking out for that. If you're on Twitter and don't follow me, please do. MarkRogersTV. I would appreciate that. We need to build the Twitter following as well. And you might be at times amused or irritated by what I post from time to time on Twitter. So we can discuss some things on Twitter. So please, again, follow me on Twitter, MarkRogersTV. And I'll be releasing the all-conference players, according to the Voice of College Football, both offense and defense, next week. Well, One Scoop John, we don't need Corey. He would be able to provide a more insightful answer than me, but any Iowa or Corey Brada fans in here can let us know why wide receivers are leaving with Cade coming. Well, with Cade coming, yes, but maybe they're not entirely sold on that as much as they are just wanting to get out of that offense. We've got Daniel saying if USC beats Utah a lot to a little and TCU wins by a possession, should SC jump a 13-0 TCU as the number 3 position? Well, it all goes into the complete resume. Just look at the resumes. We did have a caller jump on. I was going to take that call, but now they've left. Yeah. Got to go through the resumes. I tend to think at that point USC would have a stronger resume than TCU. USC would have wins over Utah, Notre Dame, UCLA, Oregon State, Washington State. TCU would have wins over. I did the whole run through on a video. So it depends. Got to add up the resumes, but without dissecting it, I would say yes. I would say I'd be in favor of a USC, although they'd still have a loss. They'd still have a loss in TCU. So they would have to have, in my book, an overwhelming case to jump. Antoine, we're right there with you. Of course, Drew Pine, he played his heart out against USC, but it's obvious. All you have to do is watch him play. He's extremely limited, throwing the ball downfield. He almost, like Cade McNamara, the only difference is Cade is more accurate with short passes. Kentucky hire for offensive coordinator. I don't know who's out there. I never usually field these coordinator questions very well on the fly because it makes me kind of have to go through coordinators off the top of my head. Yeah, I'm going to, the next few days is going to be a whirlwind in regards to content creation. It's going to be, of course, the playoff is going to be front and center after the championship games tomorrow. And then it's going to be all the bowl games and that. And then, of course, the transfer portal officially starts on December 5th. So we know some of these players that are just announcing that they're going to enter the transfer portal. Some of them have already found a destination or are close to finding a destination. So those names are going to start to get announced. So it will be difficult for me to track all these coordinator positions and produce content on that. Absolutely. Powcar, appreciate you being here as always. Prediction on the game tonight. Keep in mind, all my predictions are on Patreon. I've not made a prediction. Let's make one right now. Let's just throw it out there right now. Really, the only portion of this matchup, not that Utah's not a good team, not that they're not better than USC in certain spots on the field, most of those defensively. I can't think of, and of course the offense doesn't play the offense and the defense, but if you match them up by position, Tavion Thomas is no longer with the team. Travis Dye obviously missing for USC, but what we saw out of Austin Jones last week was pretty darn impressive that USC has it all over Utah at every offensive position, not individual position, but by unit. So this is a tough matchup for Utah. If it wasn't Kyle Whittingham, if it wasn't Utah, if it wasn't a program that has shown us over the years that they are going to come prepared, fundamentally sound, and ready to play, and are going to be fully invested, locked in, and physical, then I would give them little hope. But they will be all that. Cam Rising, I asked our guy Larry Pilgrim when he called last night about Cam Rising's health, because certainly in watching him against Oregon in particular, he was not right. Maybe he's improved considerably in 2 weeks, especially with basically a scrimmage against Colorado. So watch for Cam Rising delivering the ball tonight, early in the game. Watch Cam Rising and how comfortable it is for him to deliver, to plant and to push off and deliver the ball. That's big. He ripped up SC 415. Of course, Dalton Kincaid at 16 catches for 234. So USC is obviously going to be cognizant of that and probably has addressed that. I'm sure they've addressed that. But what is that going to leave open elsewhere on the field for Utah? And are those players capable of stepping up and being a factor? The only other aspect of it that I like on the Utah side would be the scheduling. USC now is facing a third consecutive difficult game, and the first two were not nail biters. The first one was against UCLA, and I'd really have to go through the situations of the turnovers by UCLA, but they were all key by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and USC was +3 in turnovers and only won by 3 in a nail-biter. And there were a couple situations late in that game in which UCLA was very close to taking control of that game. And if you win the turnover battle in basically a neutral site game by 3, and you only win by 3 in a nail-biter, wow. Against a good team, not a great team. And then the Notre Dame game was impressive. Now, I was impressed with USC in almost every conceivable way against Notre Dame. I thought Notre Dame fought and hung and was close, reasonably close, never close, breathing down USC's necks, but close. And so USC has fought through 2 tough opponents, physical game last week, emotional game, certainly the week before, and physical. And now they got to turn around in 6 days and play Utah, who had a scrimmage game against Colorado. Otherwise, I'm all in on USC in terms of how they've looked. Best quarterback in the country. I'm going to switch my opinion from this Bryce Young, CJ Stroud argument that I've had with myself through the entire offseason into the season too. Okay, I've seen enough of Caleb Williams to name him, in my book, the best quarterback in college football. We got Ben on the line.
Hey, Mark. Man, I'm going to say one thing. I'm excited to watch this game tonight, but as excited as I am to watch this game, it kind of is giving me this feeling like we don't have many of these left. Need to hold on to these. Cherish every one. I'm glad it's spread out a little bit. I'm glad they have the Friday night game.
Yeah, I do too. I like to be able to watch. Now, if one of these games tomorrow becomes not appealing, a blowout, then that's the only drawback to only having one on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't have another game to go to. And I know we've got all the group of 5 games, one tonight, and then the other 4 are tomorrow. But that's the only drawback. If Kansas State's up 31-3 at halftime, then we don't have another game to go to. But yeah, otherwise, if they're really good games, then I don't get distracted and I can just watch one football game at a time.
Yeah.
And you make a good point about, I think we discussed this a few nights ago, about cherishing what these games mean today versus what they will mean in the future, which, although we're getting a bit of that this weekend with Michigan and Georgia and with the Clemson-North Carolina game. That Clemson-North Carolina game in 3 years will be meaningful. It will be it will be make or break.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I wasn't, that's not even what I was meaning.
Oh,
what I was meaning is just, we were at the end of the football season.
Oh, okay.
Already, I mean, it's just, it just flew by. I mean, we're at the end. I mean, for some fan bases, it's you get a bowl and that's it.
For some fan bases, you don't get a bowl.
Boy, I know those Michigan State fan bases and stuff
Michigan
like that.
State?
That's a shot.
Nebraska?
That's a shot. Yeah, Nebraska. But I was only going to call out one particular fan base, but yeah, no. So I'm I'm just cherishing what we have left, and I'm really excited about this game coming up. I'm excited, and I'm excited for Tony and Rick because LBC, most people know them. They're both going to be at the game, so I'm going to be looking for them.
Rick and Tony are at the game.
Tim, not Tony. Tim. I'm sorry,
Tim.
I said Tony.
Yeah.
Tim.
Tim's at the game. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. But I have USC. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I think it's going to be 47-32.
47-32. Okay.
I think it's a 15-point game, and I only have it based on I think Lincoln Riley's a better coach. I think he's probably better in these situations. What?
Really?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, he did good at Oklahoma. Do you not agree?
I'm not necessarily sold on Lincoln Riley being a better coach than Kyle Whittingham. I think it's debatable.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lincoln Riley's been in this spot before more.
Has he?
Yeah. What? No, he hasn't.
Playing in the conference championship game? They're roughly the same.
Well, I mean, he's been in playoffs multiple times. And
this is not a playoff game, is it?
No, but it's the big spotlight. Yeah, I mean.
Okay. Kyle Whittingham's taken Utah to how many? I don't know. I would say the 08 Sugar Bowl against an Alabama team, and they were undefeated and playing in how many Pac-12 championship games did they play?
He's been there since he's been there since 2008.
They played Washington, and he took over for Urban Meyer. So you've got.
Well, then I'm going to back out on this because I thought he's been there. I didn't realize that.
I get your point about Lincoln Riley and the playoff games that they've played in. But I would throw it back on you that Lincoln Riley has failed in those playoff games.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. I have from what I've seen, I think this USC team is I think they're good. I think they're underrated.
USC's underrated?
Maybe.
Who's underrating them?
I don't know. I mean, all year I think they've been kind of underrated. I think, from the Pac-12 side, I have not heard, it was Oregon all year. Oregon was the team. And I don't know. I mean, even Oregon lost to Georgia. It seemed like, oh no, wait, USC is destined to fail. Everybody's waiting for them to slip up. And I thought after the first 5 games, I thought USC is the clear best team in the Pac-12. I just didn't think they got the respect. I'm probably the respect that I thought they deserved. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes tonight. I don't know about anybody
until the end of the season. I'm not saying that USC is not a tremendous team. I've given USC all sorts of compliments. I try to bypass those cliched comments. I give them all the love. I've given them all the compliments that I can think of because of their performance the last 2 weekends. But
do you think they've been an improving team as the season gone on?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, although the defense has not necessarily, but the defense has been banged up and has lost its best player. But the defense, was playing better early in the season, at least against the pass. Now, based on who they've played, I didn't know how good they were until at least the UCLA game.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get blinded by wins, which of course that's all it comes down to. But in this way, we get blinded by high scoring games. So for some reason, we think something is wrong with a team if they win a game 13-10. But if they win 48-45, well, that was exciting. So we look past all the issues. They got a +3 turnover.
Okay, but there are
UCLA, and they won by 48-45. UCLA's not some great team. They're good. They're a good team, but UCLA's no great team, and USC beat them by that much. And they beat Oregon State by that much. Like,
I think actually UCLA's. I mean, I think they're pretty tough. I think they're a pretty decent
team. Yeah, absolutely. They're a good team. They're one of the 20 best teams in the country. Yeah. Something like that. Sure.
Yeah, I think they're pretty. I mean, in the whole Pac-12, the upper echelon of the Pac-12 is good this year. Is really, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
But my feelings on the outcome of this game are I'm not looking at it with the sports knowledge as you. This is just my feelings. I don't follow the Pac-12. I don't follow anything really traditionally other than the Big Ten. And I just think Lincoln Riley is, my feelings are Lincoln Riley took this team, rebuilt them, and they're still in that process. I think they have, I think they've gotten better, and I think they're continuing to get better. And I think since they're playing this game on a neutral field, it's not going to be a mile high. And I just have more faith in this game. And it's I think, and I do kind of buy into the fact that playing a team a second time is a disadvantage to the prior winner.
Yeah. Somebody needs to prove that to me.
I mean, I buy into it a little bit, I we'll have to see, but I
buy into it nor don't buy into it. Just the whole idea of trap games and look ahead games and playing a team a second time. I don't discount all of that or any of that. I just want somebody to actually tally up the records and show us that that's actually a thing.
Yeah,
nobody does that. It's just a cliche and it's just a thought, but nobody does it.
Well, I'm going to buy into it for tonight until I'm proven wrong. And I think it's a 15-point game.
Okay. Well, you're not going to be proven right or wrong. It's just going to be another game. But
yeah. Well, okay. That's small. It'll be the data point of 1.
It will be the data point of 1. And I tend to agree with you. I'll make my prediction at the end of the the show right before the game, but I tend to agree with you. USC, I just think they're more talented. They're more explosive. They have by far the better quarterback. Not that Cam Rising's not good. He is, but he's injured. I kind of question how healthy he is. So I think at USC, on one hand, they have more incentive playing for the playoff, but on the other hand, they might be more tightly wound than Utah can just let it fly, regardless of how much they put into a Pac-12 championship. Which,
I mean, I do think there's something to that too. I think, I even expect LSU to cover this week, because I think LSU only thing they have is the championship, and it's not like a do or die situation. Oh, and I think Georgia is in no matter what. So I think it's another situation with them playing Alabama. I don't think we're gonna see Georgia's best. I mean, I know this situation's a little bit different, but it's a lot more of a pressure situation for USC.
Well, and last year Alabama had to win, Georgia did not, and we saw how it played out. Now we'll see if Kirby Smart, he will have to be a mastermind at motivation to maybe present, hey, we didn't win the SEC champion. Don't you want to be the SEC champion? Don't you want to be an undefeated national champion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see how that goes. So how hard are you fighting for? How hard are you rooting for Utah tonight, Mark?
With tongue in cheek, because I know what you mean by that, I'm going to point to something else. I picked Utah to win the Pac-12 championship when the season started, so that's my rooting interest right there.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
So, what do you think's more likely, that TCU loses or that USC loses?
I think it's very close. It's a coin toss, but I'll say TCU.
TCU. I would agree. I agree. So if you have two coin tosses, you're looking at like 25% chance to slip in there. It's going to be higher because I think they're both favored, but it'd probably be more around a 30% chance or something like that.
Yeah, so according to the numbers presented to me by our guy Steve Merrill, they're at like 58 and 55%. So if you put them together, there's like a 60-some% chance that one of them is going to lose, and there's like a 30-some% chance that both of them are going to lose.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes that's about right. So we may be playing you again. Woo. Well, it's exciting. I can't wait to see how this all pans out. And I'm getting prepped for the game. I have a Boston butt to pull out of the smoker in just a few minutes here.
Oh, okay.
And we're gonna get rolling.
Well, I had lunch today with a buddy who's an Ohio State fan. He doesn't like follow college football across the board. He just watches Ohio State, and he, of course, wants them to make the playoff, but he just thinks that they're going to get killed again.
OSU?
Yeah.
So do you buy in? This one question I have, and one thing that I seen recently, as I heard that there was a Ohio State player that was a second string defensive player made a play.
Yeah.
And he was yelling at the other defenses, this is how you do it. This is what you need to do. And I think it was kind of presented to me in a way that it was like, didn't seem like a cohesive team. Have you heard anything along that lines?
Did you hear that from somebody personally, or did you?
I think it may have been. I think it may have been. I think I was watching some of the breakdown that Al Borges does in the Michigan Insider, and I think it was the guy that hosts that. I forget his name. But he does it with Al Borges, and he has one of the other. He does a show with Devin Gardner, and I think that's what he was. I think he said something along that line. And I didn't, I'm just going off from what he said, and I didn't know if there was any. And I heard the way C.J. Stroud talked, and I was wondering if there was a little bit of fighting amongst the team.
Mm.
So I was just kind of curious, and if that's what's happening, I would definitely think that could be possible. And I was just wondering if you had any insights on anything like that.
I don't, but you're about to push me to go into a rant as soon as you get off the phone, because I've got a checklist of things that I want to say, why did that happen? Why didn't that happen? That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. And go through the whole list of everything I can think of, and then bring up some of the things you're talking about to say, I don't know this for sure, but it seems as though Ohio State is lacking this and this and this. There's a lot I got between my ears. And for as much as we talked about this for the last 5 days, I don't know.
Wait.
That much.
You haven't, but if you actually broke it down, and you should make it a show. Just these are the questions you want answered for your Ohio State views. I would watch. I'd be interested in hearing it.
Okay.
Break it down. I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love that. Yeah, it'd be interesting, especially if you get into the playoffs. That'll make it a lot more interesting. So maybe wait to see what happens there, and then pose these hypothetical questions.
Yeah, we don't know if we're going to get a team in the playoff that's highly motivated because they have a second chance, or a team that's discouraged and whose confidence has taken a huge hit, so they're unsure of themselves and how they would play against Georgia.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So you think Ohio State will play Georgia if they get in?
Well, let's think about it.
I'm not confident on it.
Georgia's the 1 and Michigan's the 2 if they hold serve. If they don't hold serve, then Michigan, if they win and Georgia loses, then they're going to flip-flop 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I don't think Georgia's going to fall from 2 any more than 2. Then TCU's going to hang on to the 3 if we get chalk. And Ohio State would replace USC as the 4. Or if we get the TCU loss, I would think USC would bump up to the 3. And I think Ohio State's going to be the 4 regardless. I just can't see any way that they could jump up beyond 4. So they're going to be the 4. And it all depends on whether if Georgia wins.
Michigan flip-flop.
Yeah. But I don't anticipate Georgia losing.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder. I would rather play TCU than any of the teams in the playoffs. So I'm hoping for TCU to stay 3 and Michigan to stay 2, or somehow TCU bumps to 4 and Michigan's 1. That's what I'm hoping, because I don't think the best path for Michigan is to play Ohio State again and Georgia right after that. So I would rather go the other way around. I'd rather play Georgia than Ohio State than
I think that not that Ohio State doesn't have issues or problems, because they do, but their problems and issues are more magnified by Michigan fixing its issues and its culture and upgrading significantly. That's more what's happened here. Ohio State hasn't gone from being one of the 3 best teams in the country to being like the 20th best team in the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, for sure.
Michigan's gone from being like a top 15 team. And I think you told me that you first heard me on Steve Dace's show. Mm-hmm. Going in through that whole 2020 season and those bad losses and 2 and 4, I was very much on board with, I don't think that this is broken. I don't think that this is a horrible thing. I can't be convinced by 6 games that Michigan's suddenly a bad football team. So I wasn't that alarmed or concerned, but there was Jim Harbaugh looking at NFL jobs. There was, 4 losses in 6 games. There was all that. There were off recruiting classes. There were a lot of things pointing in the wrong direction. And there was upheaval and turnover on the coaching ranks and all of that, there were a lot of questions to be answered. I think it's been more Michigan's gone from being a top 15 team to being a top 3 team than that Ohio State's taken any kind of hit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good, I think that's a perfectly, well, let's put this reasonable assessment, especially coming off from a loss. And I can see how there's been such a I mean, it's very reactive. You know, the fan base has been really very reactive. I think if you go into the playoffs and you win a game, it's going to be a whole different story. But, you know, and so I'm wondering if a lot of what I'm hearing is just reactive, just reactive chatter that we hear every year that Michigan has done bad or haven't been as successful as we feel that we should be. I think Harbaugh's done an excellent job at Michigan, even though, you know, I think 10-2 seasons are great seasons.
Did you think that 2 years ago?
I didn't think COVID year was, but I thought the COVID year, you know, I said at the beginning, before the year started, I was like, man, you don't have any idea how the season's going to go. They were training guys for the combine instead of for playing, you know, in Michigan, they were training for the combine instead of playing, you know, a normal fall camp. So I had no idea what was going to happen.
I agree with you, and I would think that if I were a Michigan fan, I would have been on board with Harbaugh doing an excellent job for his first few years because Brady Hoke and Rich Rod were basically 500. So for that long, this was a 500 program. This was Purdue or somebody like that, Illinois. And then he shows up 10-3, came within an inch of getting to the Big Ten championship game. So 15-16, I thought everything was great. I thought, how could he do any better of a job? Look how far they've come. Look how much they've improved. They're a legit top 10 team in the country. But then 2017, they had kind of a step backwards, didn't have a really good year, 8-5, blew that bizarre game in the Outback Bowl against South Carolina. And then 2018, okay, they're back at it. They're winning. They're 10-1. They're about to win the Big Ten. And then once they lost that game to Ohio State in 2018, then it was like, is he really getting the job done here? When is this going to happen? Are they ever going to get past this? And then they just did the same thing in 2019. They had another pretty good year, but then they lost to Ohio State again, got blown out. And it was at that point that I was like, hey, Harbaugh's a good coach. I would have never thought he's not a good coach, but is he going to be a good enough coach to turn this program into an elite program?
No, and I'm kind of almost in the same school of thought with where at 2019 I was questioning that, but just having gone through Rich Rod and Brady Hoke, I was much more willing to, even after the 2020 years, much more willing to keep Harbaugh because I knew he was a good coach than to take a risk of another coach coming in and failing on the degree and failing at the level of Hoke or even worse, Rich Rod. And I would have much rather. I thought that the odds were much better for Michigan to turn the program around with Harbaugh staying than to take a chance on another coach.
Now, I gotta say, I don't understand why they don't recruit better.
Yes, well, they're into recruiting, and this is the thing is, I even with the Ohio, even if let's say Ryan Day loses next year. They're going to be. I mean, do you think he even keeps his job?
Have to say that?
What's that?
Did you have to say that?
I'm sorry.
Do I have to hear that just 5 days after?
I'm sorry.
Saturday.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just saying for the fan base. The point I'm making is, if they did get rid of Ryan Day, who are they going to replace him with?
A top flight coach. It's Ohio State. They should be able to get somebody, right?
It doesn't always turn out that way. It's been good. It's been good, but it's a different. College football is different than it was when you guys picked up Urban Meyer.
Well, they fell into Urban Meyer. That was extremely fortunate because one of the best coaches in the country decides that he can't coach anymore. We can go on and on about the legitimacy of that. But anyway, he takes a year off. And then, if Jim Tressel doesn't do what he does and there's not the whole tattoo gate, then Jim Tressel keeps his job. Jim Tressel's not going anywhere. He's going 12-1 practically every year. He's not going anywhere. And Urban Meyer, who knows where he would have gone? I don't know what other jobs would have been open in 2011 that Urban Meyer would have shown up for. He might be the coach at USC. I don't know. But so Ohio State just
that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, if there's not that tattoo gate, then Jim Tressel keeps the job. He's not going anywhere. They're not wanting him to leave. His last season, he went 12-1, finished number 5 in the country. So, yeah.
And that's the biggest. I mean, I think that's the biggest knock against Ryan Day if you're comparing him to Harbaugh is the level of talent that Ohio State has. And I'm wondering, so do you project there being a gap closing with Michigan and Ohio State as far as recruiting level?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Michigan wins the Natty, that would make a huge difference. But we won the Big Ten last year, and it seems like we have on the pace of having Harbaugh's worst recruitment ever. Because right now we're sitting at like 2021. I know it's early, but we're like 2020. Like our class is, at least according to 24/7 Sports, I think we're sitting like 20 or 21.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now, 21, and with 18 hard commits, that number's not going to go up by much. So that's about where Michigan's going to finish. They might improve by 5 or 6 spots.
There's a couple 5-stars that we're waiting on.
Well,
that Michigan's likely. There's what's his name? The quarterback. He's a 5-star quarterback. Jaden Davis.
Jaden Davis. Yeah.
And then there's another guy that's like a defensive end and tight end. He's more of like an athlete. He's a track guy. I can't remember his name, but and he's looking at Michigan, and the downside is that he wants a good he wants to do track too, but he's also he's got a like 4.0 GPA, and he wants to be a surgeon. I can't remember his name right offhand right now, but he's taking a good look at Michigan.
Oh, Nicholas Arbor.
Yeah, Nicholas Arbor. Yeah. So that would be a big win, I think. I think that might, if they got both of those guys, I think that would bump up the recruitment class quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely, it would. You got to think, if you're the average 4 or 5-star, and you can go anywhere you want, you're down to Ohio State and Michigan. And this isn't necessarily going to be the case because anybody who's in this position is going to probably favor one coaching staff or the other, or one location or the other. But let's just, for argument's sake, say everything's equal. They like both coaching staffs. They get along with them. They trust them. They think they're really good at what they do, blah, blah, blah. They think I can go to the NFL going to either place. That's not, I can go play running back at Ohio State or Michigan, and I can go to the NFL. It's not like I need to go to one or the other for that. Now, there might be a difference in how well I'm going to be developed, but I don't see really any difference there. I think they're both qualified there, and I like the campuses, NIL opportunities are the same. You would think that just winning these games would be a tipping point to, well, everything I'm experiencing is the same, but they must be doing something right, and they must be, I'm hearing, having some problems, some issues. So why wouldn't I go to Michigan?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. One thing I want to ask you, here's something question. I look at, if I was a defensive lineman, I would want to pick Michigan over Ohio State. Do you think that's fair?
Why?
Because, well, I mean, look at what's his name, Harrison. I mean, who did you guys? You had 2 5-star defensive linemen on the roster playing against Michigan, and
Yeah, more than that.
More than that, and we had guys like David Ojabo and guys like Chase Winovich. I think Chase Winovich came in like a 2-star, and they he first round ended up being a first round draft pick. Defensive line and offensive line.
Larry Johnson, the Ohio State defensive line coach, is considered one of the best in the nation. Now, I don't know if much of that is based on him pulling in the 5 stars, because that's part of the job. That's half the job, is being a recruiter.
But then on the other side of the ball, like Michigan's offense, I would rather go to Michigan as an offensive lineman, because look at what the success our offensive line had. With 3 4-star guys. I mean, we have Ulu Timmy, which is a 5-star, the transfer. But I mean, if I compared it to Ohio State's offensive line, I don't know if you have 5-star guys in there, but I'm assuming they are because they're Ohio State. At least a couple of them.
Yeah, they're generally 4s and some 5s, but okay.
But then on the flip side of this,
show me an NFL draft list that's going to show more offensive linemen being drafted out of Michigan, because that's not the case right now.
It's like a recency. Yeah,
I know.
Okay. But on the flip side, if I was a wide receiver, I'd rather go to Ohio State.
Sure.
And we look at, I mean, Ohio State's done a great job of recruiting receivers. Oh, man. But they also develop, they have not underperformed. So, well, anyways, Mark, I think I'm going to have to wrap it up. I have some food I have to pull out, man. Absolutely. It was nice talking with you.
Get on it.
Yeah, thanks, enjoy the game tonight.
You too. Thanks. All right. We're talking to Faith here. Faith, what's going on tonight?
Hi. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me.
No worries.
I live in Pac-12 country, and I'm hoping USC loses.
Okay. Who's your team?
Huh?
Who is your team?
I pick a conference. I'm an SEC girl that lives in Pac-12 country.
Oh, okay. All right. You're an SEC girl, lives in Pac-12 country. All right. You hope USC loses. Why?
Because I have family from there. I can't pick them. My dad played football.
Okay.
So.
Very nice. Would we recognize his name?
Lowell Thomas.
Lowell Thomas?
He played at San Jose State.
Okay. Very nice.
So, I kind of got in, but I kind of got to pick my battles with this one.
Sure.
So what would be your advice to someone like myself who grew up as an intellectual in a football household?
Oh, well, why? They don't talk about things that you want to talk about?
No, I have to traverse between the two sides.
Well, I would just say that you can only be loving and kind, and look for other outlets. You can't force people to talk about things that you don't want to talk about.
And I have one other caveat.
Okay.
The LSU Georgia game, family versus family. Dad has family from Louisiana. Mom has family from Georgia.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they don't take it too seriously.
They won't.
Okay.
And I have a cousin from that school up north in Maize and Blue.
You got a lot of family.
Yeah.
All right, Faith. Well, it sounds like it's going to be an eventful weekend for you in terms of rooting and who you may get into conversations or discussions or fights with.
What made you want to do this podcast?
What made me want to do it? I love to share my thoughts and opinions. I'm a big football fan and have been for years and years and years, and I've got a background in this and have for about 30 years.
Okay, and that last guy, I respect the hustle, but I can't pick a Big Ten team. Part of the family contract.
All right. Well, certainly enjoy the football this weekend, and I hope your teams win. And I guess that would be Utah tonight.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
then
Faith. We appreciate it. All right. Keep it moving here. The Voice of College Football, BGPO Football Funk's got USC by 14. I tend to be in that ballpark myself after watching that team play the last 2 weeks and knowing Utah is a bit limited. Hoping for a better game than that. How about this? We might as well just make a pick here. I'll say USC 42, Utah 30. 42-30 USC. There's the pick for tonight. I'm right there with you, DeAndre. All right. Thanks for everybody being in the chat here. All right. Yes. You got to be able to handle all the callers, you know. I'm guessing that since we've been on for over an hour, we probably had another 50 guys hit the transfer portal at this point. Utah and USC got together back on October 15th at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Trojan fans were a bit miffed. There was a pass interference call on a 3rd and 10 that would have ended the game, giving the ball back to USC. And Utah was down by 7. They scored the game-tying touchdown or could have tied it with a conversion, but Cam Rising, who threw for 415 yards, went for a 2-point conversion to win the game 43-42. USC could not move the ball down the field in the final. They did have time to get in field goal range with about 35 to 40 seconds left. Cam Rising, big day, 415 yards. Jordan Addison, 106 yards receiving in that game. However, he did hurt his ankle, and that has been the ankle that hobbled him for weeks and weeks and weeks and really derailed his season. Mario Williams had a big game at 145 yards for USC in that one as well. 2 very different programs. Kyle Whittingham and Utah, they bring their lunch pail, get out all your cliches concerning hard work and toughness and grittiness and determination and playing above your heads. And then USC, of course, with a golden spoon in their mouths, and get out all the cliches that go along with that narrative. Okay, folks, we've got a kickoff at 8 o'clock on Fox. That's 8 o'clock Eastern time. So folks on the West Coast, again, they get kind of thrown to the side, don't they? It's kind of odd when you think about it. If you're in Southern California and this is your team, USC, and you've got to work a regular 8 to 5 job, you're going to miss the kickoff. You're probably going to be stuck in traffic for an hour. You're not going to get home until the second quarter. This game time is tailor-made for the East Coast. Isn't that crazy? It's Utah and it's USC. They should be playing at 10 o'clock at night Eastern time and 7 on the West Coast. DeAndre's on the line. What's going on tonight, sir?
What's up, Mark?
What is up?
Well, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
In your opinion, I know you can't tell me what other people are going to do. If TCU loses this game,
Yes.
will they still get in?
TCU?
Yeah.
Give me a score.
Let's say by 2 points.
2.
Yep.
Um,
Last second field goal.
I'm going to say they're still in. Yes.
Yeah. See,
I'm
that's
going to
why.
say that if USC wins, they drop to the 4. Maybe
Right.
they drop to the 4 if USC wins, and USC wins impressively.
Right. So there no, you don't think there's any chance that Alabama gets in? You agree with that statement, or in your opinion?
Oh, I don't agree with that. I was just telling you what I think will happen. I think should happen. I think USC or TCU should get in regardless. I don't know. It's a tough resume discussion or comparison between them and Ohio State. Of course, they had to go play a conference championship game. So I understand people that have that argument that say they should automatically get in regardless of how well or how poorly they play because they were forced to play an extra game in a conference championship game, and Ohio State's sitting home and they can't improve or they can't get embarrassed again. But the only argument that the committee could possibly have to move Alabama in front of Ohio State would be if LSU beat Georgia.
Wow.
Because that picks up Alabama's resume. That's a resume point on Alabama's side if LSU plays well.
Okay. Well, yeah, these conference alignments with the having a game at the end of the year is coming to hurt everybody. I remember the year that Clemson played Alabama, and Alabama beat them, but Alabama was like didn't play in the conference championship game, and Clemson did, so Clemson had to play an extra game. So I'm not saying Kelly Bryant was limited throwing the ball, so I'm not saying Clemson would have won the game, but Urban Meyer said 2015 was his best Ohio State team. You agree with that statement?
He said that, huh?
Uh-huh.
It was the best personnel that they've had because they didn't lose much off the 14 national championship team, and that's one of the reasons why they were such a heavy favorite. They really didn't lose much of anything. They did lose a few players here and there, but they were mostly back for the 15. So it was the best roster he had. They didn't play the best.
So is that a team that lost to Virginia Tech?
No.
The
Virginia Tech loss was in the national championship season. The 15 team beat Virginia Tech in the opener.
Right. So they lose to Purdue? Was that the year that Purdue beat them?
Michigan State. They lost on a last-second field goal, last play of the game. And Michigan State went to the playoff.
Okay, I don't remember that game, to be honest with you. I don't.
17-14.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. He said that was his by far his I mean, he might have just been talking out his head because he was doing a live show, but he said he thought the 2015 was the best team.
That game was controversial because, for one thing, he could never decide who his quarterback should be. So it was back and forth between JT Barrett and Cardell Jones. So they never had continuity on offense. They beat a lot of bad teams by not much. They were just sleepwalking through, but they were 11-0 or 10-0. And then Michigan State came to town, and that game was controversial because it was in the rain, and Ezekiel Elliott only got 13 carries or 12 carries in that game.
Okay.
And they didn't run him. He only had like 35 yards rushing, and Michigan State loaded up in the box, and they didn't throw it well, and it was raining, and just a miserable day. And Zeke Elliott probably should have seen the ball a lot more, and they lost on a last-second field goal. And then they went to Michigan the next week, and they were a 2-point underdog, and they killed them. And then they whipped Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah. So that Michigan State team would have lost to Nebraska, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember kind of year coming in a little bit of focus for me. But I just I think Nebraska player caught the ball, his toe was out of bounds, but they still catch. Yeah, I kind of remember that year. Yeah, I was just wondering because I was I heard him say it, but I can't remember all the rosters that Ohio State has had over the years. But I was kind of shocked that he said in 2015 was his best one. I would thought some of the ones that he had with what's the quarterback that just passed away, Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
I thought some of those
He only
guys.
started 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, and he's the all-time leading touchdown maker in Big Ten history, or at least in Ohio State
For one season.
for one season. Okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I'm gonna enjoy these games today. TCU and Kansas State. I'm kind of looking forward to, especially if I don't follow Kansas State, but I know Martinez is there, and I'm glad to see him have a better time. But I know he had got hurt during one game. Matter of fact, that TCU game, they played with 3 quarterbacks.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna see how that works out for them. But there's a lot of great games, man. Everybody should just enjoy the weekends. And I told the guys on the channel, on the Clemson channel, we should, people say, hey, we should be playing for national championships every year. And I kind of disagree with that. I think those national championships is overrated. I think what Florida State did from 87 to 1990 was way better than winning a bunch of national championships. Or Oklahoma did in the 2000s, or what you see Ohio State do currently is kind of amazing. Instead of winning, like LSU did, win one national championship, and now your program is kind of not that good. I mean, they're having a great year this year. So I think a lot of times Clemson fans, we do get spoiled, but I remember the teams from 92 to 2008, and those were some miserable years being a Clemson fan. And I'm just glad to have a chance to win an ACC title and go play in the Orange Bowl against another good team. And
And in 2 years, despite those out of conference losses, this game would be for a playoff spot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they let South Carolina. I was telling Craven and them this. I really think DJ doesn't fit what Clemson does. And I think by going to go get a pocket passer all these years, like with Trevor Lawrence and him, and I know Trevor Lawrence can run, but go back to Hunter, also the one that's transferred to Northwestern, now is back. I think we went after too many pocket passes. I think like the quarterback at Florida would have fit our system a lot better. The guy at Georgia Tech, I could just imagine that those guys would have been in the system compared to the recent quarterbacks. I know everybody said, well, Trevor Lawrence won us a national championship, but look at what Kelly Bryant did at Clemson before Alabama absolutely destroyed him. I know he takes a loss to Syracuse, but that game was an odd game. It was on a Friday. The kicker was hurt. He was hurt. You lost to 1 point to Syracuse on a Friday. So I mean, I really think we got to get a quarterback that fits our style. I think Kane is that person, but I think DJ, I think he would have done better by not going to a place like Clemson, where it was more of a traditional drop back passer type system instead of him being asked to run the ball. I can't really think of a team that does that now, but like a Stanford, or when Stanford was running their program like they were with the drop back passer like Andrew Luck, I think he would have probably fit that system a lot better than he'll come to Clemson. I'll say one more thing, Mark. I'm gonna let you go because I just brought up Stanford. One thing that I was amazed about, talking about Ohio State, I'm sorry to jump around subjects, but when Oregon beat them a couple years ago, 2 years ago, by 14 points, that team reminded me
By
of
7.
how by
Keep
7.
going. Yep.
Yeah, that team reminded me of how Stanford all of a sudden started beating Oregon and USC by physically that
Mhm.
particular team. And that's what I was about to bring up about Michigan and Ohio State. Sometimes, you got to go back to the bases. I think I'm not saying run a fullback, but I think that's what Clemson has to do. We're gonna power run the ball. I wasn't really a big fan of Michigan's quarterback, but I think getting back to that type of running game, because you got a pretty good offensive line and just running the ball, I think that will help Clemson out just like it has helped Michigan out, and then go throw the deep ball afterward. And I saw that with the comparison with Oregon and Stanford a while ago, and Oregon and Ohio State. Sometimes you just got to out physical people and to bring it back to the old days. And I think if Clemson does that against Carolina tomorrow, where they just run the ball, because Carolina's not a very physical defense, I think Clemson will be better off. I mean, you got to throw the ball some, but I think you'll be better off by running the ball down Carolina's throat with those 3 running backs and that good offensive line.
There have been so many changes in this sport based on the rules and the style of play that has made tackling and physical play less important in the last 10 or 15 years. So if somebody would go through this exercise and go through football games and figure out how many, just simply by throwing the ball more, there's less tackling because there's more guys just catching the ball and sliding while they're catching it, for example, and they're already down, or running out of bounds, or being right against the sideline, catching the ball and stepping out of bounds. There is just, and obviously there's less within the rules that's legal in terms of contact. So my point is, and there's a bunch of other things in my head that I could go through that has made the game of football less physical than it was 15 years ago, let's say. However, you still have to field a physical team. If you really want to be successful, it's still a physical sport. It's still a collision sport, and you still have to be the team that blocks and tackles better. It's still a huge part of the game.
Right. Okay, Mark, I'll let somebody else have a chance to talk. It was good talking to you, man.
Thanks, DeAndre. Always appreciate it.
All right.
As our guy One Scoop John is letting us know, we got a Patreon watch party tonight. How about that? So go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV. We will leave the link in the chat. You can join, and you can take part in the watch party and in Discord as well. Let's hear from, first of all, we want to get these super chats in. Then we will hear from Josh. Thank you so much, V. Thank you, Mark. Been going through a tough time, but listening to you has been a nice escape. How much would Ohio State be favored against USC, do you think? Well, first of all, anytime I hear something like this, of course, our thoughts and our prayers go out to you. And so when I say thoughts and prayers go out to you, that's an easy thing to say. So, we mean that, and we will follow through on that, V. So we appreciate your kind comments there, because that's an easy throwaway phrase to throw at people. How much would Ohio State be favored against USC, you think? Not as much as they would have been favored against them 2 weeks ago. Our wagering guy, Steve Merrill, he's phenomenal. Joins us from Wager Talk each and every week. We post the segments on the various team channels, so check him out. He'll be with us through bowl season. He's 11-1 against the spread. That's crazy. 11-1 in his exclusive picks to our Patreon. He has said that Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama are favored by more than a touchdown against everyone. And, we saw what that was worth last week when Ohio State played Michigan. But Ohio State would probably only be a field goal, 4 points. I think something like that over Michigan. And then we also have Pregame. Thanks for being here, Pregame. We so much appreciate all that you do and for being here. Yeah, Mark, only about 5 guys have entered the portal in the past 45 minutes, but the night is young. Yes, it is. And so are we. We got Josh on the line. Josh, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how's it going, sir? Very big fan.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just wanted to touch on one thing here as we're getting ready here for a championship weekend, and we're getting ready to watch these teams play. And as I'm watching these games and I start seeing who's left in the college football playoff, and the fact that we don't really have a dominant team like we've had in the last couple years, is there going to be one player or what player is left on what team that could kind of put a team on its back and single-handedly carry somebody to the national championship? Now you look at guys like CJ Stroud, who may or may not be in there, depending on whether or not he gets a little help. Bryce Young's not going to be there. Blake Corum, who's going to be out with an injury. And that leaves Caleb Williams from USC. Do you think he is a special enough player to single-handedly put USC on his back and take them to a national championship?
I think if anybody can, it would be him. That doesn't mean they're going to do it or he's going to do it. But when I watched Caleb Williams play last year for Oklahoma, I was impressed with his physical skills. I was impressed with everything he brings to the table. But I also took into consideration he's just a freshman. And so he has taken just enormous strides as a quarterback in his decision-making, probably his accuracy. I don't want to say I can recall that well to know that his accuracy is better, but his decision-making's better. And he's just physically more mature and he's mentally more mature and he's learned a lot. And to watch him the last 2 weeks against UCLA and Notre Dame, yeah, he is the guy that if his team wins a national championship, he would by far be the most responsible for that championship more than any other player in the country.
I agree. What reminds me of is, I believe it was 2006, Vince Young, I believe it was, Mark, Texas, USC, Vince Young just goes off in the Rose Bowl. I think he has that kind of capability, whether or not he's going to be able to do it. One thing I'll say about Caleb Williams, he's still young, very emotional player. I've seen him get down on himself at times, kind of lose confidence, get frustrated. But that's me being a Michigan fan. That's the one team right now that I do not want to face unless it's in the national championship game, just because of his ability to take over a game single-handedly.
Yeah, we saw it on display last week. Notre Dame's got a really good defense. They've got an athletic defense. They've got a strong front, and those guys were just getting both gassed and frustrated, getting him pinned against the sideline or in the pocket and him escaping or just delivering the ball at the last second, and just time after time after time. You know, it's going to happen. Those guys are used to it happening a couple times throughout a game, but just over and over and over, and getting USC into 3rd and 18 situations that he would convert. Again, you know, that play only gets converted 5 to 10% of the time, and he's converting them, you know, seemingly half the time.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on is I heard you question kind of not understanding why Michigan recruits at, you know, maybe not at the level of Ohio State, but a little bit better. Do you think, and this is just my assumption, kind of looking outside in, and I've kind of followed their recruiting pretty closely, especially during the Harbaugh era, I've kind of noticed a trend with Harbaugh's recruiting classes. They seem to be every other year is a top class for him, and a top class being top 10. Like this year, we touched about on the show, he's kind of landing in the 20 to 21st range. And if you look ahead, even right now, I know it's really early for 2024, he's already setting up for a pretty solid class, whether it be top 10 or top 5. It's too early to tell. But do you think now Michigan, with the identity that they have they might be kind of to recruit more, not looking so much at the stars of a player, but more of the fit, kind of a la Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State. Jim Tressel even did a little bit of this, kind of to find players that kind of fit the identity more than just trying to go out and get the best overall athletes?
Well, I think any coach would be smart to do a combination. You obviously have to have athletes, but yeah, if you're going to take the 10th best defensive tackle in the country versus the 5th because you just believe that he's a harder worker and he fits the culture better and maybe he's more cerebral, then yeah, you do it. And you say, screw the recruiting rankings. This guy's just better for us. He's still really talented. Maybe he's a split second slower, but we love all these other qualities. I think any program should take that that objective. I know that one difference between Ryan Day and Urban Meyer has been that Urban Meyer just flat out wanted the best athletes, the fastest, and it obviously worked out pretty well for him. So, but Ryan Day, because of how much he wanted a sophisticated passing attack, wanted not just wide receivers that were gifted and fast, but he wanted guys that were polished, that had worked on their skills and were precise route runners, understood the passing game, and were more refined. And that makes sense even for what he is trying to do.
I agree. I just
real
touch
quick,
on
Josh,
here's. Yep, go ahead.
Just to finish real quick would be, I would think that D'Antonio may have done that a little bit more out of necessity for not being in the running for those kind of players versus Harbaugh doing it more out of having the options, but wanting to target more of the guys that would be a better fit.
I agree. In fact, with D'Antonio, I believe it was his best ranked class that he had towards the end of his tenure there with Michigan State. He kind of went against what he had been doing the whole time, and it was kind of his downfall. Yes. I believe that's when he had all the problems internally, and people transferred out of the program, and that was kind of the end of it. Last thing I want to touch on is I grew up in the household. My dad, diehard Ohio State fan. I became a Michigan fan. I don't know if it had to do with kind of rebelling against Dad, that he was a big Ohio State fan, or if it was that Remy Hamilton 48-yard field goal to beat Notre Dame back in, I believe it was 1995. Yeah. But so it's been kind of a back and forth little 10-year war with us, I guess. And he has had bragging rights, obviously, for a long time. And he is the perennial trash talker of his generation. So it's felt pretty good to get some redemption over these last couple of years. But I watched Steve Dace come on here a few days ago, and I gotta say you handle losses pretty well, because Steve Dace was not directly giving it to you, but making a lot of bold statements about Ohio State as a program. And I just for you being a Buckeye, and I think you're a very level-headed Buckeye, and I enjoy listening to your program. So,
well, I appreciate that, Josh.
All right, you take care. I'll give somebody else some time to talk.
Thanks, Josh. My thought there is that for you long diehards who have been here with me for a long, long time, you've heard this a number of times, so it might bore you, but I'll say it quickly, that my approach is to just be as truthful as possible and let the facts and the information dictate what I believe, or what we're not talking about moral things. We're talking about what's on a football field. So I don't go the route of, I'm going to try to please everyone, or I'm going to try to pussyfoot around topics, or I'm going to try to please everyone so I'm well liked. But I'm also not going to the other end of the spectrum to try to intentionally piss people off, clickbait, rile people up. I'm neither extreme. I just kind of deliver it the way it is. And you know what? Sometimes that's going to be boring, because it's going to be the response could be, Mark, you didn't really have anything that controversial to say about that, or you and your thought process and what you believe there is pretty much in line with what a lot of people think, and it's really not that unique. And it would be like, well, yeah, because that's what I believe. So a lot of other people believe the same thing. But then there are going to be other times where I'm going to deliver what I believe is the truth, and others would just, and I'm going to be off the rails, according to some people, and they're going to think you're crazy, or, why are you so adamant about that? And it's going to be more controversial. So sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, but you can always rest assured that it's what I believe. Antoine, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the kind comments. Antoine, Michigan fan, thank you for that. And yeah, I wouldn't have been as composed in earlier years. There's no doubt about that. So trust me. You get older and eventually get wiser, I hope. But yeah, that game, meaning that game, not the one that was played on Saturday, but the game year after year after year after year, has certainly struck my emotions more than any game, period. It's been more important to me than any game year after year after year after year. However, its importance has lessened, and I am providing a service here. Hopefully, we do have a community here, and I am, and we do deliver the voice of college football here. That's however you want to phrase me being the voice of college football. Some say I'm the voice of college football. Others say the channel is the voice of college football. It makes no difference to me, however you see it. But I want to represent everyone. So if I believe Michigan's the best football team in the country, I'm not going to allow my fandom to get in the way of that analysis. Or if they're better than Ohio State, which right now they are. I really can't argue that in any way. Now, are there 11-1 teams that lose to other 11-1 teams that still may be better? Sure, of course. It's only one game. But the magnitude and the importance of that game is so... Well, what leads me to that conclusion that Michigan has surpassed Ohio State, at least for the time being, is a few things. Last year's result, Ohio State's inabilities against Oregon last year, and I know that was a long time ago, but that still stays with me, and I think it's still relevant, that they did fix issues, but the old issues still reared their ugly head against Michigan. Michigan didn't come into this game. So this wasn't 1993, 95, 96, where Michigan was the inferior team, but they had a great day. This is not a 6-4, 7-3 Michigan team that came in 93, 94, or 95, 96 and had a great day against Ohio State, and give them all the credit in the world for outplaying Ohio State that day. But you still walked away from it saying, well, Ohio State's the 10-1, 11-1 football team, and Michigan's the 7-4 team. So maybe Michigan was just better on this day. They're still not better, but they won the game. Credit them. No, this is Michigan winning all the rest of its games, at least as impressively as Ohio State mostly, and sometimes more impressively than Ohio State against common opponents. And then they lowered the boom on Ohio State in the fourth quarter in Columbus. So all that adds up to Michigan is 1 and Ohio State's 2 in the Big Ten. That's just the way it is. I don't like it, but that's the way it is. So to Mark's point here, I think there's a difference between two teams playing one wins and the rest of their resume shows that they're not as good as the team that they just beat, but still saying that they're better. So, for example, in 2019, of course, 2018, Ohio State loses to Purdue. Purdue's a 6-6 football team. Was Purdue better than Ohio State? No. They were better on that night. They were a lot better on that night. They whipped Ohio State. Credit them with a win, but they pulled off an upset. They pulled off an upset. They played a week later, Ohio State probably wins the game. And we've got all sorts of data points that we can point to that back that up. Back it up clearly that Ohio State was much better than Purdue that season. They were a 13-1 football team. Purdue's a 6-17. But on that night, Purdue's better. But otherwise, you say, well, Ohio State's still better because they were better than all these teams that Purdue lost to. But in this case, you're talking about two teams that are at the top, and then they play on Saturday with that result. That result after last year's result. So it's not like Michigan surpassed Ohio State by leaps and bounds. Maybe they have. We'll see. But for right now, they are a clear number one. And even if they lose on Saturday, well, that's kind of a strange place because Michigan's now blown the Big Ten championship. Purdue's the Big Ten champion. Are they the best team in the Big Ten? No, but they're the Big Ten champion. Can't take that away from them. If Purdue would win this game on Saturday night, they are rightful to say we are the best team in the Big Ten. They aren't, but they have every right in the world to say it because they won the Big Ten championship. They are the Big Ten champions. They are number one in the conference. Now, they're also number one in the conference who lost to Iowa by 3 touchdowns, to Wisconsin by a couple scores, to Penn State. So they're not the best team. But they have every right to say they're the best team. If Utah beats USC tonight, and let's say it's not convincingly, they win the game by 1 point. Is that going to really change my mind much about these teams? Not really. It's going to cause me to evaluate Utah in a very strong place that, hey, they played a championship game. It was all on the line, and they came through. That says a lot. Right now, past USC, it's very difficult to rank the Pac-12 between Oregon and Oregon State and UCLA and Utah and Washington. Wow. They all won games against each other. If you try to run that line of thinking through the Pac-12, aside from USC, and they lost to Utah, but they lost by 1 point, 2 point conversion, and they've won all the other games. So I think USC is clear as the number one right this second. That may change in 15 minutes. But if Utah wins tonight, I will probably not think they're the best team in the Pac-12, but it doesn't matter what I think. They will be the champions of the Pac-12. They will be the number one team in the Pac-12. Now, fortunately for Utah, and it's a little bit more uniform, their record will be in a place where they can say that. And it's reasonable. It's logical because they will have the same record as USC. They will have swept USC and won these other games against who they beat. They lost to Oregon. They lost to UCLA. They beat Oregon State. Anyway, Utah will have the record and the win and the championship to say we're number one. Purdue's will be kind of strange if they win the Big Ten championship because they're the Big Ten champs, but you're 9-4. You lost 3 games in the Big Ten. All right, we got Pregame Sports. Pregame Sports, we thank you so much for all that you do. We thank you for being here. You've shown up here in the last, 3 weeks? A month? 2 months? And we appreciate your contributions. Mark, is this the first year ever where every championship game has a team with the 3+ losses playing in it? Well, why do you say that? Clemson has 2. Carolina has 3. Oh, where every game there's one team. Okay. Yes. That is correct. Well, I have stored up here every conference championship game in my brain, but to go through every year and go through every record and try to figure that out, I have to think that that is a first I can't imagine where every conference championship game had a team with at least 3 losses. Yeah. That's going to take some research. So that's a great question, though. That's a good find or a good catch by you. That's a good one. I like that one. I believe it is. Well, first of all, we had the SEC championship game start in 1992. Then we had the Big 12 start in 96. And for a long time, we only had 2 conference championship games. Then the ACC started in 2007. When was the first ACC championship game? Something in that range. Something in that range. And then the Big 12 and the Big 10. Well, the Big 12 then, of course, ceased to have championship games for about 5 years. When Nebraska and Colorado left, they didn't have championship games from 12 to 17. But then the Big 10 and the Pac-12 started in 11. So we've only had 5 conference championship games since we've only had 5 conference championship games, major conference championship games since 2017, because the Big 12 was off. Now the Big 10 and the Pac-12 starting in 11, we'd have to go forward from there. So I'm sure we could go back maybe to SEC and Big 12 when those were the only 2, and we could possibly find when those games involved at least one team with 3 losses. But that's a great question. And again, that's something that you could take on in going through Google and going through each conference championship. I got to tell you guys that I have so many ideas for content that I think of constantly that I just can't get to. So, for example, I wasted a lot of time. Man, I didn't even do this one. I wasted a lot of time because I did a Georgia LSU numbers comparison of common opponents. And I haven't gotten around to producing that video. I've been gone all day. I haven't been able to do any work today. And it's really too late to go through that. And then I did one with Clemson and North Carolina. I went through all the numbers, all the box scores to do that for really no reason, because it's not going to get done. I guess I could do it tonight and post it, but hardly anybody's going to watch it at this point. But that's some wasted time. The reason I bring that up is because it also brought to mind, I really want to come to a conclusion on rematches. So we've got a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. We've got one in the Pac-12 championship game, and then we will have possibly some in the playoff. Probably not, but it's possible with, of course, Ohio State and Michigan, and probably none in bowl season, of course. But I want to put to rest this whole business of rematches and who has the upper hand. Because in the NFL, rematches happen all the time. And of course, in the playoffs, they're between teams that are like quality, but they are very meaningful in the college ranks. Because think about it, the only time you're going to rematch would be in a conference championship game. So let's see, the last time we had one of those would have been Notre Dame and Clemson in 2020, after they played in the regular season at South Bend, and Notre Dame won. Then, of course, Clemson won the rematch in blowout fashion, 34-10 at the ACC championship game. We've had one every year at the Big 12 championship because of the nature of the conference schedule. Everybody plays everyone. So last year, for example, we had Oklahoma State winning the regular season matchup, and Baylor won the rematch, and so on and so forth in the Big 12. In the Pac-12, it's pretty frequent in the Pac-12 because there aren't many teams that are missed in the schedule. But I would love to run through all of conference championship game history, but it's too late now because it's conference championship weekend. So maybe that's an exercise for the off season to go through who wins these rematches? Is it discernible as to who has the advantage? If one team won the first matchup, are they basically more times than not, are the statistics backing up the thought that that team's better? So they beat them again because they're just better. Or it's tough to beat a team twice. So these are usually splits, like Alabama, Georgia last year. Would love to go through that. Ben says, Mark, your reasonable analysis is why I love and watch this show. Your less reasonable analysis is why I come on it. Oh, my goodness, Ben. Understand, Ben. Understand. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it so much. Understand that a lot of things that I had to say about LSU, I know they lost this game to Texas A&M, but they did prove to be a pretty good football team, right? I ranked them higher than others at a certain point, and they kind of pulled through for me, as they did in 2019. In 2019, LSU, of course, proved to be the best team in football, won the national championship, played a brutal schedule, but they were about number 9 preseason. And they beat Texas. Then they started to win games in the SEC against a good SEC schedule. After one or two, I approached the top 25. That actually makes sense, like I typically do. And LSU they went to number 1 really early. People were telling me, LSU's not number 1. They're only number 7 in the AP. Why do you have them number 1? Well, because they've won the most games against the best teams. They have the best resume. What ended up happening? I was way ahead of the curve when it came to ranking LSU in 2019. I had them number 1 weeks before everybody else did. So anyway. All right, we are getting ready for the Pac-12 championship game. We so much appreciate Dominic. Thank you so much for that contribution, Dominic. I hope you guys understand that I don't take these contributions lightly in any such way, even if you have nothing to say like Dominic here. Thank you so much for that contribution. It's very nice of you. You can also go to Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. There are certain advantages to that I won't go into right now, but Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. You can search Mark Rogers TV there. And I believe we've arrived at near the kickoff of the Pac-12 championship game. Tim, Tony, and Rick are going to be here after the game. Tim, Tony, and Rick with hopefully, while, of course, there are USC post-game guys with unbiased analysis. They will provide the Utah side as well. They're all college football junkies and do a phenomenal job. Tim, Tony, and Rick here after the game, both on the main channel and on the USC channel. And then we'll be here all day. I do have something going on during the day that I need to take care of that's going to take me away for a few hours, but I will be recording and I'll be watching everything on Saturday. I plan on being here at halftime of the Big 12 championship game. I think we'll do a hit at halftime. And then maybe at halftime of the SEC championship game, we'll see. But I'll be here throughout the day on Saturday. And then after all the action, about 11:30 prime time on Saturday night. Pregame Sports, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the pregame content, Mark. Pregame Sports, you're awesome. Thank you for that. And we will see everybody here after the game. Tim, Tony, and Rick are going to be here providing analysis. And then you will see me all day on Saturday as we're going to see where this falls. If USC and TCU win, it's kind of boring, but I hope you will join us for our watch party on Sunday. We're going to take in the final rankings and college football playoff selections together, live here together, all of us together on Sunday, regardless of the way it plays out. But again, I'll be here tomorrow night to take your calls after all the ball games, specifically the Big Ten and the ACC, the prime time games. All right. See you after the ball game. Tim, Tony, and Rick. You will see me on Saturday.